Hey guys, this is Kami Ken, and I think people really underestimate how much execution matters when it comes to creating a comic or executing on a story idea. Because you can have some of the most incredible story ideas, but then with poor execution, it's like it drops the ball and you're left wondering where did it all go wrong? You had everything going for you. And then you can watch a story about a guy in Texas. And then it's one of the funniest, insightful shows that you've ever seen in your entire life, called King of the Hill. That's the whole story idea. It's just some guy in Texas. And that's it. But then you would have let's say you have a super complicated story with its plot mechanics and all this stuff going on, and then when you try to actually get into the story, it's either too convoluted, too complicated, and you can't understand it enough to really get into it, so you just drop it. There's stories like that just they start off strong, they have a good premise, and then you're like, okay, yeah, this is too hard to follow, so I'm just gonna bounce. Like the execution is wrong. And execution is one of those things that you can't, if you're making a long form story, you don't want to drop the ball on that. You want to keep the reader's interest for as long as possible. That's one of those things that when you're making manga, you pay attention to exclusively. The thing about keeping reader attention, or what they call reader retention, is with execution, it's less about making all the right steps and more about not making too many missteps. Meaning, if you have a horror story, you want to give people what they're looking for in a horror story. There's certain tropes that they're looking for that they need to recognize it as a horror story. There are certain tropes in an action story that people need to recognize it as an action story. If you look at, let's say, Rurouni Kenshin, it's partially a romance story, and the story itself is called Meiji Era Swordsman Romantic Story. That's the subtitle of it, and that tells you exactly what it is. That's one of those things that I noticed in Japanese media a long time ago, where when I was looking at the title of Metal Gear Solid, it said Tactical Espionage Battle Action or something like that, where I was just like, why do they have that underneath the title Metal Gear Solid? But that's because looking at Metal Gear Solid, I wouldn't know what it is. I'd be like, what the hell is Metal Gear Solid? But then when they have that subtitle below it, it tells you exactly what it is. Tactical Espionage Battle Action. And you're like, oh, okay, now I understand. And once you understand what it is, you go in with certain expectations of okay, is it going to deliver on what it just told me that it is? And so going back to the Kenshin example, you have certain expectations of what you're looking for out of the story. You want there to be some romance aspect. It's delivered in that first chapter. You want there to be some aspect of swordsmanship. It's in there. It's taking place in the Meiji era, so that's in there. These things you have to deliver on in an interesting way through the course of the story. And if you don't, if you miss certain parts, that's going to ruin people's enjoyment of the story. In fact, Kenshin went through at least 2 earlier one-shots before it finally got accepted as a full story, where the character wasn't quite figured out yet. We were still trying to feel out who this person was. And then by the final first chapter that actually debuted in Shonen Jump and became the first anime episode that we saw, they figured out the character is okay, this is what he is, this is who he is, this is what kind of character we're dealing with. And then the whole story spun out from there, and it became one of those legendary manga that was created. And that's because it never hit one of those story missteps. And story missteps is another even harder concept to describe, where it has so much to do with not only taste but reader expectation, where if you have, let's say, like a Superman story, he can't die and stay dead because he's the main character. He needs to be there to, like, they're not going to give over the Superman mantle to another character forever and then it's just going to be carried on with some other guy who's wearing the Superman name forever. Like, regular Superman is always going to come back and then it's always going to be his story. Batman will never lose completely. Like, if you have him lose 100% and he never gets back on his feet and then he just instead becomes a paraplegic and turns to philanthropy or whatever, like, that's not what we come to Batman for. Like, we don't see him doing all this other random stuff. Like, we come to Batman for him being Batman. Same with like another random example, like let's say Blue Lock. We're not gonna have these kids battling to become the best striker in Japanese soccer, and then one of them needs to stop and go for a dentist appointment because his teeth hurt. Like, that's a story misstep where it's like, why'd you just turn the story off to go do this other thing? Or let's say in Dragon Ball, we really explore Chi-Chi's feeling of sadness when she had her child Goten during the 7 years where Goku was gone, and we're gonna explore Chi-Chi's like depression from Goku's death. And it's like, bro, I don't want to like deal with that stuff. Like, just get to the hands, please. Like, get to the fighting. Like, I don't want to dive into that. I don't want to dive into that stuff, bro. Like, her having sad conversations with Bulma over a cup of coffee or tea or whatever at the kitchen table. Like, bro, I don't want to see that, dude. So, yeah, that's what I mean by like story missteps and story expectations and what you call like execution. Like, if you like fuck up in execution, people will forgive you up to a certain point, but you got to get the story back on track before it's dropped. And that's the thing that Shonen Jump's cancellations or Shonen Jump's competitive nature trains the most, is they train those story missteps out of you to where you are constantly making decisions, but you're trying not to make something that's too wildly out there that'll fuck up break your story. And at the same time, you're trying not to make something that's too safe to where everyone expects it, and you're making a story that people can predict. You always want to stay one step ahead of the reader and give them something that will surprise and delight them. And that's what I mean by execution. It is one of the most difficult things to master as a storyteller. And once you can like get that down, like what are readers expecting from the type of story that I'm creating, once you can get that down, then you can basically build trust and a loyal fan base because they know you'll deliver on what you promise to give them. So that is the importance of execution in stories, and I hope I can bring you the same satisfaction in my latest webcomic, Saintly. It is a demon chase horror action comedy about two best friends who have to outrun the demon loan sharks that they borrowed from. Basically, it's like Scooby-Doo meets K-pop Demon Hunters without the K-pop. And the story backs the main character into a corner where she has to decide between the hard path to success or lose her soul to the lure of easy money. And we get to see the ramifications of her choice, and if she can hide this deal with the devil from her friend, or if it will tear them apart. And I hope you read my comic in the description and check out the story. It should appear in your email inbox or your spam folder if you don't see it. And that's all for this video. Please like the video, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next one. Peace.